Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we basically pull out the crucial bits from sources you give us, making complex topics, well, easy to grasp.
And hopefully engaging, too.
Exactly. Today, we're diving into a big one. The turnaround of IBM back in the 90s. Our guide is Gerstner Jr.'s own book, Who Says Elephants Can't Dance?
A classic of business transformation literature, really.
For sure. So if you want the inside story on how this tech giant pulled back from the brink without getting bogged down in endless detail, you're in the right place.
We'll hit the key moments, the surprising strategies.
Right. Because you have to picture it. Early 90s, IBM, I mean, they were the kings, right? But suddenly they're stumbling badly.
Leadering is a good word. Declining profits, loads of internal conflict, just adrift. It was a pretty dramatic scene.
And that's where our story, our deep dive, really kicks off.
Yeah, it's fascinating because IBM was this legend, They basically built the computer age, but suddenly the world shifted. PCs, open systems.
Stuff that wasn't their traditional mainframe playground.
Exactly. And inside IBM, there was huge debate. Lots of people were saying, break it up, it's too big, too slow.
And then Gerstner arrives, someone from totally outside tech. That must have sent shockwaves.
Oh, absolutely. A seismic event, like you said.
Okay, let's dig into that. Gerstner, he had done big things at Amex, RJR Nabisco. But IBM, he must have been surprised to get the call.
He definitely was. He talks about being hesitant, partly because, well, he wasn't a tech guy, not in the traditional IBM mold. No engineering background to speak of.
Which you'd kind of expect for the CEO of IBM back then.
Right. His background was more consumer markets, strategy, execution. He felt maybe a bit out of his depth technically.
But the people recruiting him, like Jim Bruck, they were persistent.
Relentless is the word Gerstner uses. And Burke apparently used this pretty unusual line.
The "you owe it to America" line.
That's the one. Basically saying IBM was too important to fail, and Gerstner had a duty to step in.
Wow. Talk about pressure. Not your standard recruitment pitch.
Not at all. And Tom Murphy chimed in, too, arguing that IBM's problems weren't really technical at their core.
They had smart people, good tech.
Exactly. The issue was more organizational paralysis. Lack of clear direction, strategy wasn't being executed. The culture needed a major overhaul.
Yeah.
And that was Gerstner's sweet spot, being a change agent.
And just to add to the drama, the day his appointment is officially announced, Business Week runs this cover story about him taking the job. Talk about walking into a firestorm.
Absolutely. Huge pressure, lots of skepticism inside and outside the company. Could this non-tech guy really handle IBM?
So, okay, day one. He walks into this super high-stakes environment, and that first meeting with the top brass, the corporate management board.
Yeah, about 50 top executives.
And the detail about him wearing a blue shirt when everyone else wore white. It sounds small, but it kind of signaled something, didn't it?
It really did. IBM's culture was famously formal, very hierarchical. Even dress code mattered. But what he did in that meeting was way more important than the shirt.
It wasn't just a hello?
Not at all. Akers, the outgoing CEO, maybe intended it that way. But Gerstner took the floor for, 45 minutes, immediately setting a new tone, laying out his initial thoughts.
And he didn't pull any punches, from what I understand?
No. He made it clear past successes didn't guarantee future protection. Bureaucracy had to go. Decisions needed to be pushed down the ladder.
But still with the central strategy, right, and a focus on the customer.
Absolutely. Balanced decentralization. And he talked about right-sizing, benchmarking costs. He also tackled the no layoffs myth head-on.
Acknowledging the huge number of people who'd already left?
Precisely. Cutting through the corporate doublespeak. And really importantly, even then, on day one, he voiced his doubts about breaking up the company.
Which was a big deal, because that seemed to be the direction everyone was pushing towards.
It was the dominant narrative. Size was seen as the problem. But Gerstner, right from the start, questioned it.
That's fascinating. Like his gut instinct was telling him something different. Did he see a strength in IBM being, well, IBM? The whole package?
I think so. He sensed that maybe the integration, the ability to offer end-to-end solutions, was actually a unique advantage, especially as tech got more complex. Could they be agile and integrated? That was the question he started asking.
And that skepticism became central to his whole strategy?
Absolute pivotal.
Oh.
He realized customers might not just want bits and pieces. They might need someone to put it all together. And his early talks with customers really hammered that home.
Okay, and speaking of those early days, that story about Thomas Watson Jr. waiting in his car on day two.
Yeah, incredible story. Watson Jr., son of the founder, former CEO himself, 79 years old at the time,
Yeah.
just waiting in Gerstner's car to meet him.
Wow. What a moment. A link between the legendary past and this very uncertain future.
And apparently Watson Jr. later told Gerstner how thrilled he was that he decided not to break up his company. That must have been powerful validation.
A huge vote of confidence right when he needed it. So, okay, he's got this conviction building, keep IBM whole, and then he pivots hard to the customer.
Immediately, heavy travel schedule, meeting clients nonstop.
And Operation Bear Hug. What exactly was that? Sounds intense.
It was about him personally getting plugged into customer feedback. He insisted on reading customer call reports, trip reports himself, bypassing the usual summaries.
So no filter, straight from the source.
Exactly. He wanted the raw data. It wasn't just symbolic. He found real, recurring problems that way. Things like slow service responses, for example, which led to immediate fixes in how they handled support.
Ah, so it drove tangible changes quickly.
Absolutely. It sent a massive signal. We're listening. We're changing. We're going to be driven by what you, the customer, need, not just what we think you need internally. It was all about becoming outside in.
Which leads directly to that idea of customer-centric becoming the guiding principle.
It became the mantra, and he made it concrete at that big customer meeting in Chantilly.
You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, he stood up and said it flat out, we would redefine IBM and its priorities starting with the customer. And then he backed up. Big price cuts on mainframes. A huge move. Showed they were serious about competing, about earning back trust.
And it was around then he said that famous line, right? The one about vision.
Yes. IBM currently most needs is not a vision. Which sounds counterintuitive, maybe?
A little bit. You think CEOs are all about vision?
Well, he clarified later he wasn't against vision long term. But in that moment, IBM was bleeding. They didn't need another grand, abstract plan. They needed action. Now, focus on the basics, serve the customers, execute flawlessly.
Got it. So it was about pragmatism over poetry at that point.
Precisely. He kept saying turning IBM around was all about execution. Stop the blame game, stop the endless reorganizations that didn't achieve anything, just do things urgently.
And you mentioned they did make some big strategic calls early on, but kept them quiet?
Yeah, keeping the company unified, sticking with mainframes and semiconductors, protecting R&D, those were decided pretty early.
Right.
But they didn't broadcast it. Why tell the competition your game plan?
Smart. It's all about the follow-through. Like his other sayings, strategy goes only so far.
Right. And that classic, people respect what you inspect, not what you expect. That really sums up his focus on accountability, on making sure things actually got done.
But making this huge shift, focusing externally, executing, that required tackling IBM's internal culture, didn't it? He called it an inside-out world.
Oh, yeah. That was maybe the hardest part. IBM was dominated by its internal processes, its powerful divisions, geographic units, product groups often acting like separate companies, sometimes even competing with each other. Customer needs often felt secondary.
And that non-concur system, where basically anyone could veto a proposal.
Yeah, imagine trying to get anything done quickly. It allowed individuals, often lower down, to just block initiatives if it didn't suit their little fiefdom. It bred incredible inertia.
Sounds maddening.
Which is why Gerstner said so powerfully, culture isn't part of the game. It is the game. He knew that unless he changed how IBMers worked together, how they thought, none of the strategic shifts would stick.
It was fundamental.
Absolutely. He talked about needing people who have each other's backs, fostering teamwork instead of internal rivalry. And his comment, levels mean little to me, showed he cared about substance, about getting things done, not just titles and hierarchy.
It really underscores how personal leadership had to be in this situation.
Totally. He stressed the CEO's role in constantly communicating the crisis, the new direction, the new cultural values, hammering it home.
And those IBM leadership competencies he introduced?
Yeah, focused on winning, thinking differently, and again, execution, setting clear expectations for what leadership now looked like at IBM.
And that quote about change, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. Oof, pretty blunt.
Stark, isn't it? But it captured the reality. Adapt or disappear. No middle ground.
So alongside the culture change, there was this intense strategic focus, focusing on core business.
Right, making tough calls, like reinvesting heavily in the mainframe even when some thought it was dying, sticking with semiconductor technology because it was foundational.
And saying no to things.
Crucially, saying no to lots of potential acquisitions, MCI, Nortel, Compaq, were apparently considered that might have looked tempting, but would have diluted their focus. Discipline was key.
And they sold off some businesses, too.
Yeah, the Federal Systems part, the IBM Global Network later on, things that weren't absolutely core to the integrated strategy they were building.
Which leads us to the service leads the future part. That was a huge shift, wasn't it? Towards integration and consulting.
Massive. Gerstner and his team saw that as technology got more complex, customers didn't just want boxes. They needed help making it all work together. Integration, management, consulting. That was the future value.
So they pulled together all the scattered services units.
Yep. Unify them into one global organization, which is a huge task, creating common processes, pricing, sharing skills globally, hiring thousands of new people, building a whole new kind of business for IBM, really.
And that, quote, an institution is the lengthened shadow of a person, feels very relevant here. His leadership really shaped this new direction.
Absolutely. And again, collaboration was key. You can't build a global services giant without people truly working together, having each other's backs, as you like to say.
Okay, final piece, e-commerce. This feels like where IBM really caught the next wave.
It was. They saw the internet wasn't just about consumers browsing websites. Gerstner realized its potential to transform business, healthcare, government, everything. The whole networked world idea.
They called it network-centric computing first.
Yeah, articulated that vision. I think it was at Comdex in '95. Then in '96, they really coined and pushed the term e-business.
With that big advertising campaign, I remember that.
Hugely impactful.
Yeah.
It wasn't just marketing. It was IBM defining the next era, saying, we get this and we can help you navigate it. And that simple phrase he championed.
E-business is just business.
Exactly. Cutting through the hype, saying this isn't some weird separate thing. It's about using networks to do business better. It gave IBM its voice back, its confidence.
And led to that final triumphant image. The elephant has learned to dance.
Perfectly sums it up. The huge, lumbering giant have become agile, responsive, and relevant again. A remarkable transformation.
So, wrapping this up, what Gerstner did was, well, it was a masterclass, wasn't it? Execution, customer focus, keeping the company together, tackling culture head-on, and then grabbing the future with e-business.
A potent combination.
Yeah.
Driven by relentless pragmatism and strategic clarity. Lots of those aha moments and surprising decisions we talked about.
Definitely. And it leaves you, the listener, with something to chew on, I think. When you look at how much IBM had to change, how quickly just to survive and then thrive.
Makes you wonder, right?
Yeah. What fundamental shifts do organizations need today to navigate this constantly changing landscape? How do you get that balance right between the big vision and the day-to-day grind of execution?
And how do you keep that customer focus truly genuine, not just a slogan, when everything else is swirling around?
Lots to think about. Hopefully this deep dive gave you a solid grasp of one of the most significant business turnarounds ever. Thanks for joining us.